Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of DrBB's Briarpatch. This week and in the weeks coming, I will be doing a series entitled Reliving the Dying of George Floyd. Last week, watching that trial was hard. Many of us watched and saw aspects of that fateful day that we could not even have imagined. I mean, how could anything make the horror of that 9 minutes that it took for Derek Chauvin to drain the life from George Floyd more horrible, more horrifying? Many of us did not know that George had actually been inside the police cruiser and that he was then dragged out when Chauvin arrived on the scene. And it was then that George was forced to the pavement. He cried out that the pavement was tearing into his face, but his cries were not heard. Yeah, George resisted being put into the back of that cruiser. He resisted in fear. What black man wouldn't? He stated several times that he was claustrophobic, that he would not be able to breathe in the back of that cruiser. He asked if he could just sit up front. He was laughed at and denied. Derek Chauvin, it seems, decided that he would show George what it would really be like to be unable to breathe. And he did, with his hands in his pockets, at times lifting his feet from the ground to increase more of his weight upon George's neck as his knee pressed harder and harder. Chauvin posed for the cameras. This image is one that is seared into the mind and the soul of America. This image alone should be enough to get a conviction of Chauvin. But last week we heard and we saw more. Today we heard and we saw more. So yes, last week was difficult. So far we had just had the image, and that was enough. George Floyd lying there helpless. Derek Chauvin nonchalantly forcing his life out of him. We listened to the gut-wrenching testimony of people who were there. People who told of how they cried out begging for George's life. Many of them breaking down, crying, voicing their guilt over not doing enough to help him. And the most heartbreaking of all was the young store clerk from Cup Foods, the one who had taken the presumed counterfeit bill. He stated he wished he could just go back and change that decision to take that bill. Or that if he just taken it and let it go and then lose the $20 from his pay. The video footage showed him out there in front of the store, in between the store and that cruiser where George lay. And that young man paced with his hands on the back of his head as if he too was being detained in that moment. In a sense, he and all those who were on that street corner that day were. They were trapped and will be trapped in that 9 minutes for the rest of their days. They will never forget. They will never get that 9 minutes back, but they do get to live on. You see, if they had done more than name call Chauvin and his fellow police officers that day, they may well have found themselves in a similar position as George. Last week, the first week of this trial, with all that we witnessed, all that we felt, we saw the sadness, the tears, the guilt, and the frustration. These were all present. But the most familiar emotion for many of us is anger. It's always been here. And since May 25th, 2020, it has been a constant emotion. But this past week, it rose to a new level as we witnessed the prosecution seek to humanize the victim. What is wrong with the justice system when the state has to prove that a murder victim had a right to live? Now, so far, the defense has not wasted any words on trying to build sympathy for Chauvin. I think perhaps even he, as inept and deplorable as he is, he knows that this is useless. No one has spoken for Chauvin. And I have to admit, it will be revoltingly interesting to witness the defense present its case based upon what we've heard so far. I don't know if I can stomach it. Last week and again today, I watched the defense attorney as he shuffled papers, shifting around in his seat like the kid who did not do his homework and was afraid of being called on for the answer. And Chauvin, sitting up straight, pretending to take notes on that yellow legal pad, times looking around, but pretending to be the studious kid in the hope that he would not be called on. They both need to be called on. They both need to answer for themselves. The defense attorney for trying to make this trial about George Floyd's character and asking stupid questions like the time when he seemed to infer that an EMT does not get the same quality CPR training as a paramedic. Yes, the cross-examination questions of the witnesses for the prosecution were just that stupid, and today was no different. Now, this week and the following weeks of this trial, they will be excruciating. But we need to remind everyone that George Floyd is not on trial. It does not matter if he was on drugs, if the $20 bill was a fake, or if he had a prior criminal history. None of that matters. And time and breath should not have to be spent defending him. Chauvin is on trial. It should be a clear-cut case. No question. Nothing to deny. The United States criminal justice system, as well as the very soul of this country, is under indictment along with Derek Chauvin. And the only way we can possibly begin to heal is for justice to be served, for Chauvin to lose his freedom, his life. Now, I want to have hope. We need to have hope. However, we have seen it play out again and again. Yet the video evidence has never been this incriminating, this blatant. But Still, we fear that Chauvin will walk free. Why do we fear that? Well, not only have we witnessed white police officer one after the other walk free after taking the lives of innocent black men and women and children, but we've also watched a white president for 4 years commit heinous crimes in broad daylight and on live camera or audio. And then on January 6th, his majority white followers did the same. And justice has been slow to serve. We have good reason to fear and little past evidence for hope. No, the conviction of Derek Chauvin will not bring George Floyd back. But perhaps it will send a message that justice is fair and equal for all, that no one is above the law, and that yes, black lives